Welcome into the install with Greg Cosell of NFL Films. I'm your host, Buck Rising. Greg, buddy, I thought about bringing an air horn to the broadcast today, but I didn't want to piss you off and scream it right into your microphone. But it's week one. We made it. It's finally here.
It is, and I'm pretty excited about that because the preseason is, let's just say the preseason is the preseason.
Indeed.
And we'll leave it at that.
and we don't have to worry about it again until next preseason.
Exactly.
Start, forgetting names that we're just learning because there's a bunch of dudes added to the bottom of the roster on Thursday. Anyway, this continues our week one preview. We did 3 of the most exciting games last week between the Colts and the Seahawks. We talked about the Patriots and the Dolphins, and certainly 3 great matchups for you today. We'll start with the Thursday night opener. We'll talk about the Titans and the Cardinals, of course, and then we'll finish with what I think is going to be a great matchup in the AFC between the Browns and the Chiefs. Greg, I guess when we look at this opener, we've talked at length about Tom Brady, about year 2 with Bruce Arians and this offense. Todd Bowles at length about how this defense kind of adapted over the course of the last postseason. But I think I can't imagine that the entire game has changed because Zach Martin isn't playing. But against this front 7 of Tampa, man, I can't see any way that doesn't shift advantage Buccaneers right out of the gate.
Well, it's funny. Everybody remembers the Super Bowl, and deservedly so, when Todd Bowles did some things that he really hadn't done throughout the season. He hardly played any snaps of dime, meaning 6 defensive backs throughout the season. I think he might have played 8 or 9. And then in the Super Bowl, that was a significant part of his game plan, playing with 6 defensive backs. Obviously that was a specific game plan. He had 2 weeks. It was a matchup against a Chiefs team that they had played earlier in the year and lost to. So that was very, very specific to the Chiefs. They will rely, of course, on their front 4. That's what they do. They're a really good team. They've got 2 of the best linebackers in the game, in White and in Levante David. But this is a difficult team to match up to, the Cowboys, because the Cowboys can line up with 3 really good wide receivers and a very good back as well. So obviously the number one thing in a pass game is protection. If you can't protect your quarterback, you don't have a pass game, as we essentially saw in the Super Bowl. As good as Patrick Mahomes is, when you have difficulty protecting your quarterback and your quarterback is anticipating and therefore perceiving pressure, even the best quarterbacks don't function effectively and efficiently. And it's Dak's first game back. My guess is he probably feels pretty comfortable, but still, that's a matchup that likely favors the Bucs on that side of the ball, just their front 4 and just one player. And I don't know how many snaps he'll get. He's a player whose tape I loved in 2019, and I know he had a very, very good preseason, and that's Joe Tryon from the University of Washington. Yeah. I imagine he's going to get some snaps, and he's a very, very good edge pass rusher as well.
Yeah, Dylan Radins found out about him real quick in the preseason game that the Titans and the Buccaneers play. But you talk about that collection of skill position talent, not just the wide receivers. I think they got a pretty interesting group at tight end as well, Greg. Yes. Dallas does. Jordan Whitehead has officially been ruled out of this game, the Bucs safety. And I think the defense across the board for the Buccaneers is really, really strong, but I do think that they will be able to exploit Dallas, that is, some potential matchups in that secondary. How do you see Mike McCarthy and Kellen Moore kind of scheming this up to make sure that they can take advantage of this passing game downfield?
Well, I think one of the things to keep in mind is, and the Cowboys, I'm sure, will do this. Last year, obviously, CeeDee Lamb was a rookie, and he played a lot in the slot at Oklahoma, and therefore last year played predominantly in the slot for the Cowboys. I think one thing you're going to see this year with the Cowboys is that they're going to line up their 3 wide receivers in different locations, because they predominantly had Michael Gallup as the boundary X, the single receiver to the short side of the field. They'd have Cooper the Z, meaning he could move. He could be the motion receiver, and they'd have Lamb in the slot. I think you're going to see them mix and match this year and move receivers around and look to create matchups that they feel favors them. So I think that's one thing that will be different about the Cowboys from a year ago. My guess is Todd Bowles will know that, but those are three pretty good receivers. And I think you could easily make the argument that in terms of pure talent, that CeeDee Lamb is the most talented of the three.
Yeah. On defense, of course, the objective will be to stop the defending Super Bowl champions and the 44-year-old quarterback who it seems nobody is capable of stopping, regardless of where he plays or how long he continues to play. What is the challenge for Dallas against this Buccaneers offense, understanding that they lost a couple of pieces in free agency or during the offseason, that with a defense that wasn't quite up to snuff a year ago, but did, I think, play a lot better down the stretch?
Well, I think one thing when you play against Tampa Bay is you're going to have to cover on the perimeter. And one of the things they do exceptionally well, particularly in normal down and distance situations, is they'll line up with two tight ends. They'll tighten the formation. So what that essentially does, and of course, Dan Quinn is the new coordinator for the Cowboys. He's predominantly a single high safety defensive coach. So that means that if the Bucs tighten the formation, Buck, and they split out with what we call plus splits, wider splits with their two wide receivers, because they do this out of 12 personnel with two tight ends. So you have two wide receivers on the field, whether it's Evans and Godwin, whether it's Evans and Brown, whether it's Brown and Godwin, it doesn't matter. That's three very, very good wide receivers. And those tight formations with both tight ends attached essentially means that the corners are going to have to play man to man. Whatever the technique may be, whether it's zone technique, man technique, it doesn't matter. They're matching up. And that's one thing when I studied this summer the Bucs offense from last year with Brady, that they did such a good job of attacking. They play matchup football because they're so comfortable with their wide receivers, and they're three really, really good ones. So, who the Cowboys line up at corner, I don't know. Is it Anthony Brown? Is it Trayvon Diggs? Is it a rookie, Nashawn Wright? I mean, I guess we'll find out. But the point is that they're going to be attacked one-on-one outside the numbers. And the other thing they love to do is play action crossing routes. And that's a staple of what they do. They're very, very good at that.
This is such a fantastic first game, not just because it's Tom Brady, not just because it's the Dallas Cowboys, America's team. I don't know what it is about this particular season, Greg. Maybe it's because last year was so weird. I'm so excited to watch these two teams take the field tomorrow night.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty excited. It's a really good opener. I thought Dak Prescott, by the way, in his 4.5 games last year, I thought he played
so good,
absolutely sensational football. I think his evolution as a quarterback is really a tribute to that staff, to Dak, because he came in the league as a 4th-round pick from Mississippi State. There were legitimate questions about him as an NFL starter based on his college tape. And that's all I judge by, because that's all I can do. I met Dak Prescott for 10 minutes at the Combine the year he came out, but I certainly don't know Dak Prescott, so I can't speak to that. But I think his evolution as what I would say now is a real quality NFL quarterback has really been fun to watch.
Yeah. Let's talk about another quarterback who seems it's still in the process of evolving as an NFL player. Kyler Murray and the Arizona Cardinals will come here to Nashville in week 1 for a game against the Tennessee Titans. It's the first time the Titans have opened at home since I think the Mike Mularkey regime. This is an interesting game, Greg, mostly because I look at the Cardinals and I look at Cliff Kingsbury and the form of the air raid offense that he brought to the NFL out of college. I looked at their season last year that seemed to kind of peak with that Bills win, the Hail Murray touchdown pass. Yep. Then they go on to lose 5 of their last 7 games, miss out on the postseason. And the 2 teams that they beat were 2 of the teams from the NFC East, which, notoriously has struggled in the last couple of years. With the way that teams faced them as the Cardinals went down the stretch, it seems like defenses were playing a ton of dime against them, and I didn't see any real adjustments from Kingsbury in that offense. What was your observations of this offense last year?
One thing I've learned from coaches who've coached in this league a long, long time and who are a lot smarter than I am, and they will tell you that coaches coach what they know. And Cliff Kingsbury is a young coach. He's grown up in the air raid offense. That's what he knows. That's what he teaches. And by the way, that's why they drafted Kyler Murray, because he ran that offense in college. So when you really look at what I think, and we won't know this till Sunday, and this is something clearly that Mike Vrabel and the defensive staff, Shane Bowen, are preparing for, is they're going to have to play against 4 wide receiver personnel, 10 personnel, 1 back and 4 wide. And in fact, last year, the Cardinals lined up with that personnel package on more than 20% of their offensive snaps. So 1 of 5 snaps a year ago had 4 wide receivers, and you have got to be prepared for that. Because it does a couple of things. Number one, it spreads the defense. Number two, it makes the defense very often declare before the snap of the ball what they're doing, which always helps your quarterback. You want to give him more information before the snap as much as possible. And because it's spread, that also gives Murray room to run if he chooses to run. And right now, that element of his game may be the most dynamic. He can make special throws, but he's been very inconsistent and erratic as a passer through his first 2 seasons. And quite honestly, purely based on tape study, the tape tells you that he did not improve that significantly a year ago from his rookie year.
Yeah, that I guess that was going to be my follow-up, is basically how have you kind of seen him evolve since he came into the league? Because it's still, the game still very much looks the same when you see him out there. And it's, I don't know if it's organized chaos when he runs. It just seems chaotic every time he takes off with the ball.
Yeah. I mean, we have to remember, as talented as he is, and believe me, he's got a really good arm and can make special throws, but he's short. And to live in that world as he grew up as a quarterback, he had to learn how to make throws against bigger people who were rushing him. So he makes a lot of throws off balance. And while he makes some phenomenal throws off balance, believe me, I could show you clips from a year ago, particular snaps where you go, wow, that's just a ridiculously good throw. He also misses a lot because at the end of the day, you're off balance.
Yeah.
So he's very erratic as a passer, but you have to be really, really conscious of his second reaction ability, his ability to move and make plays with his legs, because he's a super dynamic runner. Whether you want to put him in the Lamar Jackson category, and obviously the Titans are very familiar with Lamar from a year ago on 3rd and 9 when he ran 50 yards for a touchdown in the playoff game. But Murray is very, very good at that, and you have to be very, very conscious of it, and you have to decide tactically how you want to play that. I'm not smart enough to have a brilliant answer for that, Buck, but you have to have an answer for that.
Well, and Rashaan Evans compared Kyler Murray to Lamar, not in terms of physical size and stature, of course, but in terms of the way that they play the position. And maybe that works to the Titans' advantage to a degree because they have game plan for Lamar Jackson so many times over the last couple of years.
But you know what's so interesting about that? The offenses are totally different in stylistically, because when you play against the Ravens, you're playing against an offense that's built around the quarterback as a runner, and everything they do formationally, motion, they do a ton of motion. Last year, the Cardinals hardly did any motion whatsoever, and they run much more of a spread offense. The Ravens ran a multiple tight end offense with a lot of creative ways to get to basic run game schemes like, power, zone runs, pin pull, things of that nature. The Cards, even though the quarterbacks, you might say, are somewhat similar, what they do tactically is totally different.
Yeah. When they come out with their 4 wide receiver sets, one of them will inevitably be DeAndre Hopkins, who it seems like is going to get his numbers anytime he gets out on the field. The Titans intimately familiar with DeAndre Hopkins for all of his years in the AFC South. J.J. Watt as well, and we'll talk about the defense momentarily. But, Greg, I guess the question that I've gotten from a lot of Titans fans throughout the course of the last week is, who will the Titans match up on DeAndre Hopkins? And I don't necessarily know if it's a cat coverage type situation, like Mike Vrabel says. You've got this cat, I've got that cat.
Right.
How can they defend this kind of receiver when it's basically going to be all hands on deck?
Well, normally, and that's the thing about the air raid, unless Cliff Kingsbury has made adjustments over the summer, which again, we never know this when it's week 1.
Right.
But normally in the air raid offense, receivers line up to the same side a very high percentage of the time. And as I said, there's almost no motion. So Hopkins normally lines up predominantly high percentage to the left side of the formation. So if Mike Vrabel and staff decide on a cat coverage, Buck, that whoever plays right corner is going to get DeAndre Hopkins pretty consistently. And I guess we don't know the answer to that as we speak right now. Fulton's going to start. Farley's not ready, so it's going to be Fulton and Jackrabbit. We'll see. Jackrabbit Jenkins is throughout a lot of his career. He's played both sides. He's played on the left, I think, more recently, but they may decide they just want to match up. We'll see. But again, then you're going to have AJ Green likely on the other side. You're going to have Christian Kirk and Rondell Moore in the slots. They've got weapons.
Oh, I loved Rondell Moore coming out of Purdue. Even as much as I hate Purdue for where I went to college, he is such a fun player. One I think that would have fit well within with a lot of offenses, but certainly I looked at him when the Titans were in the market for a wide receiver and thought he would have been a fantastic fit here in Tennessee.
Yeah, even though he's a really, it was an interesting pick in the second round because he's 5'7", and obviously, he's an outlier because he's 5'7", but obviously he's got dynamic skills. I think he fits really well in the slot. He's explosive. He's laterally explosive. So this is an interesting matchup. I'm really curious to see how Vrabel and Bowen decide to match up. We don't know the answer to this because there's not a lot of teams in the NFL that line up with four wide. In fact, Arizona did 20% of their snaps. Buffalo did 15% of their snaps, and nobody else really does it hardly ever.
Right. Well, it's you're fascinated, and everybody here in the state of Tennessee is fascinated because they are waiting to jump on Shane Bowen's neck after how badly the defense performed a year ago. Not necessarily fair to place all the blame at his feet, but he's definitely the face of the defense, and that's been basically the rallying cry all offseason. Vance Joseph coordinating the Cardinals on the other side of the ball. A couple of new pieces. Well, at least we thought a couple of new pieces before Malcolm Butler was placed on the reserve retired list, but they do get J.J. Watt up front. Jordan Phillips, it seems, will not play in this game. Chandler Jones remains a threat on the edge, even though he's coming off an injury, a year where he was bogged down by injury. What do the Cardinals like to do on defense, and how does it square up with the Titans' run-based offense?
Well, it's going to be very interesting because I think the Cardinals, one thing about Vance Joseph is he plays a lot of man and he blitzes a lot, but a lot of that doesn't necessarily happen on first down out of your base defense. And it'll be interesting to see what the approach is with Todd Downing and staff, because when you look at this Cards secondary, I'm not even sure who's going to play in the slot right now.
No.
So I guess we're going to find that out on Sunday. So here's the question. Do you line up in your base and just say, okay, it's Henry time? And then the Cards don't have to worry about putting a slot corner out there? Or do you say, you know what, let's get some three wide out there and see who they're going to play in the slot and feel like, hey, maybe we can attack them in the pass game, because their third corner right now, obviously they know who it is. I don't know who it is. I doubt you know who it is. They certainly know who it is, but I'm not sure, looking at their roster, who that's going to be. They drafted a rookie from Florida, Marco Wilson, in the fourth round, whose tape I kind of liked. He was a big-time high school recruit, same high school as Patrick Surtain and Tyson Campbell. Big-time recruit, started as a freshman in the SEC. So I don't know if he's won the job. I don't know. I don't know who the slot corner is going to be.
Yeah, well, they'll see Chester Rogers in the slot for the Titans. It was thought when Josh Reynolds signed here that might be the case for him, but he's been bogged down by injuries.
But the other interesting thing, keep this in mind, unless they're playing man and doing cat coverage and matching up, we know that Jones can line up in the slot. We know that A.J. Brown can line up in the slot as well. That's where A.J. Brown lined up the majority of his career at Ole Miss until about the final 5 games of his college career. Now with the Titans, he's basically been the boundary X, but he has a ton of college experience in the slot. So now we're getting into matchup football, and that's the fun of and the excitement of week 1 is we don't know.
Todd Downing's got a ton of pieces to play with, and he certainly has the ability to take advantage of those matchups as we're discussing. All right, let's put a bow on this with the Browns at the Chiefs, a rematch of the divisional round from a year ago. I mean, it seems the entire summary of the Browns offseason, Greg, has been to beat Kansas City. You know, that's their week one opponent, but there seems to be a concerted effort to get over this Patrick Mahomes hump, if such a thing is even possible in the sport right now.
Yeah, that was the game I believe Mahomes got hurt too last year, was it not?
Correct.
I think that was the game Mahomes got hurt. But one of the things you have to match up to when you play against the Chiefs is you have to match up to Travis Kelce as the single receiver to the boundary on the backside of three wide receivers, particularly when they line up Tyreek Hill as the inside slot receiver to that trips formation. That is a bear to play against. In fact, they scored a touchdown on it against Cleveland last year. Because one thing Cleveland did in that playoff game is what a lot of teams do to that matchup is they play what we call quarters, 4 across, but they lock Kelce man to man. And on that particular touchdown, I believe it was a 20-yarder, they actually had Denzel Ward, the corner, playing him because the coverage at its core was zone. So Ward stayed on the outside, and Kelce just killed him and caught a touchdown. Kind of like a whip route, as I recall. Yeah. But they played, but you get no safety help. And the reason you don't is because when Hill is the inside slot to trips and he runs vertically, that boundary safety is responsible for what we call 3 vertical. So he can't give any help to whoever is on Kelce. And you know how the Chiefs feel. They would have Kelce matched up against anybody and they'd feel good about it. So they're a difficult matchup, as we know. I'm not telling you anything profound. Now, the Browns have different people in their secondary this year. They have John Johnson, a very good safety free agent from the Rams. I know that they feel a lot better. They have Troy Hill as another corner. We'll see. I think they feel a lot better about their overall defense than they did a year ago.
And hopefully Myles Garrett closer to form of the player that we've seen pre-COVID. Of course, he seemed to be one of the players who contracted the virus and seemed to be legitimately affected. He's spoken to that fact quite a bit. How big a difference maker is he, Greg, when he's completely right? I don't know that there's a more unblockable thing in the sport right now.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he's a terrific, terrific player, and he's one of those guys you truly have to account for. Now, the Chiefs really upgraded their offensive line in the offseason, but it's all new. So, we'll see how that plays out as the season progresses. Obviously, Mahomes is great. We don't need to spend a lot of time discussing him. But Garrett is a guy, particularly when you get into longer yardage situations, you can't just say, it's one-on-one and we're fine.
Yeah. Baker Mayfield seemed to really find his stride down the stretch of the season last year for the Browns. Kevin Stefanski seemed to do a really great job with that offense. They got to the playoffs. Everything seemed to be clicking at the right time for them. And then, of course, they run into the buzzsaw that is Kansas City. Yeah. But 60% of the time, Greg, the Browns were running on first down last year. I understand that a lot of their concepts are set up off of run action and play action, like a lot of these offenses that we talk about now. But how much are they doing to help Baker? And do they, I guess as the offense starts to evolve, or does it need to evolve basically to be able to be more of a threat in the passing game rather than being so run reliant?
Well, they're run reliant, but they really do a good job in the pass game off of that. And one thing they do exceptionally well off their outside zone run look is they make it appear as if Baker is going to roll out off of that. And second level defenders have rollout rules. When it looks to them like it's going to be designed roll, they have rules. The Browns are really good at kind of countering that and playing off that. And they do a really, really good job with it. But when you play the Chiefs play a lot of cover one. They play a lot of cover 2 with Matthew as the middle hole defender. And Matthew was such a key to what they do because of his ability to do so many different things, both in man coverage and in zone coverage. And one thing about Spags is he will blitz. And they blitzed a lot last year. If I remember correctly, I think they blitzed a ton on second down in this game. I think that was the case. You think about third down as being the big blitz down, but I think they blitzed quite a bit on second down, if memory serves me correctly, particularly when it was second and long. And he stays with it. He is not afraid to turn the dogs loose and turn up the heat. That's an MO of Spags, and it always has been.
Where can Cleveland take advantage of this Chiefs defense, understanding the kind of concepts that Steve Spagnuolo likes to run?
Well, I think Cleveland has to be able to run the ball against pretty much everybody. So it really comes down to what they think their best run game concepts are against the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Now, Cleveland added a lot more what we call gap scheme run game last year, and you do that for a couple of reasons. Number one, you do that because of the defensive fronts you're getting, and they did it also because Wyatt Teller became their right guard a year ago, and he was one of the best pulling guards in the NFL, and in gap scheme, you pull a guard. So I think they did it for two reasons. You know, a lot depends on the front look you get. Where do you feel the gaps are? Where do you feel the bubble is? You know, how you best can take advantage of the defensive front look you're getting.
I can't wait to watch all of these games that we've been talking about. I can't wait to watch NFL football, Greg. I can't wait to break down NFL football from 2021 with you next week. It's going to be such a great time. The NFL matchup show, by the way, is returning
It is
on ESPN with Matt Bowen and with Sal Pal. Greg, when can the people get the NFL matchup show on ESPN before the game start?
I think it's fair to say, Buck, that it's a DVR event for most. I don't control the times. I just show up.
That's right.
I just show up in my man makeup, Buck, and the rest, you know, we let it fall where it falls. But it's on 8:30 Saturday morning on ESPN2. And for those who might be enjoying themselves on Lower Broadway, when they come home at 4 a.m. Sunday morning, they can tune into NFL matchup on ESPN.
Drag yourself in from the honky tonks. Maybe you're eating a little bit of pizza, hot dog. Watch Greg, Sal Pal, and the crew break down all of this week's matchups in the NFL. It's one of the smartest shows in television. I can't wait to pregame this slate of games with the NFL matchup show. Greg, appreciate the time as always, and I look forward to chatting next week with some actual film.
I look forward to that, Buck. Thanks.